Hi, are you an author looking for some perspectives about publishing? I'm Jennifer, the traveling publisher, and I'm here with my friend, also a publisher, also a Jen Grace. Hi, Jen.
Hey Jen, how are you?
Good. Thanks for joining me today. So this is an actual series that we do because Jen and I are sort of living parallel lives. We're both publishers, but we do things a little differently and in a little different locations. So Jen, let's talk a little bit about what we do. Go ahead and tell me a little bit about your company and where you're located.
I am in Hartford, Connecticut, and been in business for 10 years. We are Publish Your Purpose, and our focus is on elevating thought leaders and amplifying their voices and really helping them strategically write, publish, and grow the big idea that they have.
I love that. And we'll put a link in the description. And I'm Jennifer Bright. My company is Bright Communications, and we publish books that improve people's lives, everything from children's to adults, fiction to nonfiction. So let's get started with the questions, Jen. You go first.
All right, so what trends are you seeing right now in the publishing industry that authors should be aware of?
Good question. I love to talk about trends, Jen. I would say the biggest trend I see in publishing, but also in life in general, is no one has an attention span anymore. And so books are
I
getting
know.
shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And actually, that includes novels as well. We're publishing a couple of novellas and short story collections. And so, yeah. So I don't know, for better or for worse, books are getting shorter. How about you, Jen? What are your requirements to authors who submit their manuscript to you? What do you like to see?
That's a great question. So, unlike you, where you do have a much broader focus in terms of the children's, the fiction, all of those amazing types of books, we don't do any of that. So, our focus is nonfiction specifically, working with people who are thought leaders, even someone writing memoir who, has a bigger purpose. And so what I'm looking for, because I am the one who kind of all the manuscripts come through, is I'm looking for someone who has a bigger mission and message than just the book itself. Because if we look from a strategic standpoint and a marketing standpoint and distribution and all of the things, we're looking for authors that really are trying to get their voice out there in a much bigger way, not someone who's going to say to us, hey, I want to sell 100,000 copies of my book the day it launches, and then they have no mechanism to do that. I'd rather have someone come to us with realistic goals to say, hey, this is the impact I want to make, and here's what I have available. How can we make this work?
That makes a tremendous amount of sense.
Mhm.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So, how do you help authors decide what publishing path they're going to choose?
What a good question, Jen. And so, interestingly, I've been doing this, my company doing this publishing for about 10 years. And initially, every single author who came to me said, well, my goal is to get a traditional book deal, but you're kind of like plan B. Do you know, no one has said that to me in years, Jen, because I think people have just become more savvy, more accepting of the self-published model or the independent, also sometimes called hybrid or custom model, which is what we do. What I do when I have the intake call with my authors is I have a presentation that I give, and part of that is to explain that publishing is a spectrum. So on one side, you've got the traditional people that we see on TV on shows like Younger. Those are rare as hen's teeth these days because it's only like, what do you think? One in 1,000 books is published that way?
If
If
that,
any.
yeah.
And truly, unless your name is Oprah Winfrey or Donald Trump or something like that, they don't want to talk to you, right? They want the proven deals. Then I explain to authors on the other side of the extreme is self-publishing, which I define as you do everything yourself. You are the general contractor for your book. You might even do everything yourself. And I always tell people, like, can you do that? Sure. Should you do that? Maybe not. And so that's why companies like ours exist. We're the happy middle ground where authors hire us to create a top quality book. We give them the tools to be successful. And so many of my authors will go with our program of a full publishing package, but sometimes people also a la carte and do a mixture. So I guess at the end of the day, my advice to authors is there's never been a better time to publish a book
Mhm.
because there's never been so many ways to publish a book, and you have lots of options to balance your two most important resources of time and money.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. I would have answered the same way.
Awesome. Thank you, Jen. So next question for you is, what do you think makes a great book cover and why?
All right. I'm going to be partial and just share my own book as an
Okay.
example
Love it.
because we have done over 200 books. And I have never been a super fan of using our own face on a cover or some kind of imagery that's going to be outdated. Do we have a host of books that have the author on them? Yes. But there was a lot of strategy and intentionality behind how that was done versus like, oh, hey, I have this shot of me that, my child took of me standing behind a tree or standing next to a tree in the backyard. That's not the right resolution. Like that doesn't work. But if you go and have a custom photo shoot, fantastic. Mine, though, is text-based. And I am a big fan of text-based covers. Actually, my memoir is back here too, also very text heavy. And so obviously fonts can eventually have an outdated feel to them. There are certain fonts that just kind of look outdated just inherently because of how the font is intentionally designed. But I really feel like when we think about a cover, well, the number one thing I think we need to think about that no one considers is how does this look in a thumbnail on a computer screen, on a sales page, scrolling through Barnes and Noble, scrolling through Amazon, bookshop.org, wherever you may be? How does that look? Because if it is so complicated and you have a lot of competing colors, competing fonts, competing images, no one's going to be able to read it and they're just going to skip on versus something that's like big and bold like this. It's, maybe you can't really read the subtitle and that's okay. At least if the title just pops off the page at you and you're like, oh, that's intriguing me to want to know more. I find those to be the most effective. So it really is what we try to really strongly encourage our authors to do. But everyone has personal preferences. And at the end of the day, we're a hybrid. So our goal is collaboration. And so, if someone wants their photo on the cover, we're going to make sure that it really kicks ass. Like they're really, really doing it well, not just kind of taking whatever they may have in existence and hoping for the best.
Absolutely awesome. I love that word collaboration, and it's something people maybe don't expect, but I think something about they value about the way that we publish. So awesome cover, great example.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And what's funny is that I actually had, you should see the first drafts of this because I had like a different vision for it. They are tragically bad. I'm like, okay, my vision did not actually execute properly. And so I'm like, let's go real basic here. So that is how we ended up here. Okay, so I love this question because I could talk about this for days, but what are some of the most common mistakes that you see authors make before they actually hit publish?
What a good question, Jen. I'm going to then punt that question back to you because I'm dying to know what you're going to say. And I would like to share too that I didn't realize how similar our companies were. We too just passed the 200 mark as well.
Oh, how
200 published
cool.
books as a company. Like you and your team, we've worked on thousands and thousands of books for other people, but 200 for us. So
How
congratulations. That's
fun.
awesome.
That's so cool.
So I'm going to say that the two most common mistakes authors make are literally at opposite ends, polar opposites. So the one mistake I see commonly is authors who are in a drastic hurry to get their book out. Maybe there's an event, maybe they're doing a speaking engagement, maybe it's their cat's birthday, but they rush and rush and rush and rush, 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 and sometimes even encourage and ask us to skip steps, like proofreading. And then the book comes out and they read it. And there's something different about reading that actual book, right? You catch mistakes that you maybe didn't catch before, or they give it to their librarian aunt who looks at it and they're like, what were you thinking? How did you miss these things? And
Mhm.
so rushing is number one, a big problem because people don't realize there's a reason that we take the steps that we take, and there's a reason we
Mhm.
do them in the order that we do them. The other is at the opposite extreme, and that's the people who are such perfectionists
Mm.
that they show the book to their 10 closest friends for their thoughts. They read it 27 times. They send changes, one at a time by email. And they say things like, I just want my book to be perfect. And I admire that. We're all about perfection. But at the end of the day, perfection is the opposite of published. Like,
Mm.
if you keep doing this, your book will
Mhm.
never come out. And so those are my two. Those are my two. How about you, Jen?
Those are such good ones because that extreme, that spectrum, both sides are so problematic, and it doesn't even matter which. Like you gotta have a middle ground there. Oh, I love the way that you said that. I think just being even more tactical is doing something where you don't have the natural skill set to do it. So just because Canva has book cover templates does not mean you should use it to create your book cover because the templates that are in there are not, especially for authors that we work with who are using it for brand, like establishing their brand, establishing themselves as a personal brand. bringing in new clients. Like reputation matters. And if you have a really bad book, it is going to be like really weigh down your reputation versus having the impact. And I think to your point about rushing is that people will rush through the process and then they're like, oh, I don't know why my book's not, working or like it's not getting any sales. Or it's like, oh, wow, I had this traction and now I'm losing this traction. It's like, yeah, because people are looking at your book and thinking like, wow, they really half-assed this. And like, you never want to be on the receiving end of that, especially if you weren't really half-assing it. Like you might have been putting everything you are capable of into it, and it still could come off that you're trying to take shortcuts because you just don't know what you don't know. So I think design is a big one. And then skipping editing. Like we are really, really strict as a publisher where we will not put anything out that has not been copy edited and has not been proofread. It's just not an option. And it can be an exhausting process. It's not always fun, but there are ways around it to make it so it's not too bad. But then at least we don't have to worry about on the other side that a book slipped through the cracks that is subpar. And I've had to have one come to Jesus moment with one author. I wish I've had a few more interventions based on a couple of other books, but I had one where I basically had to say to her, I'm like, the content of your book is amazing. The design choices that are being made right now are going to destroy all credibility that you have. And so I basically said to her, and I was like going back saying like, I think we can make this tweak, this tweak. And she just was having no part of it. And finally I was like, all right, then I'm going to have to take the publisher purpose logo off of the cover, remove any references to us on the inside of the book, because I'm not putting my reputation on the line for your poor decisions. And that got her to like really wake up and be like, oh my God, I don't want to lose that. I'm like, we'll still be your publisher behind the scenes. I still love you. You're just not making a great choice right now. And that got her to kind of like turn of like, oh wow, if they're not willing to put their company name behind me, clearly I'm making some decision that's not in my best interest. And so that worked, but it's hard because like we're so married to our work and we want it to be perfect, like you said, and we want it to just be like this thing that like encapsulates everything about us and everything. But the reality is that a book doesn't have to do all of that unless you're famous and it's an autobiography.
Wonderful point. Exactly. And you just illustrated so many reasons why, can someone self-publish? Sure. Is it going to be so much better to work with a professional? Yes, absolutely. So we talked a lot about the nuts and bolts of publishing the book here, Jen, but my last question for you is about you, superpower, which is how do you help your authors promote their books?
Mm. Our focus, and it all comes back down to the beginning foundational pillars of who are you writing this for? How do you want to be impacted by it? How do you want them to be impacted by it? What's the purpose? What's the mission? What's the bigger picture that we're going for here? And so if I look at what really makes books successful, it's having base that base level of information sorted out to be able to say, this is what I'm going for. Because then from there, every other marketing strategy and or tactic can be directly tied back to an objective. So we think about SMART goals. Everyone knows about SMART goals. Everyone talks about SMART goals, but are we actually following them? Most of the time, no. So if we want our book to be a bestseller, there are going to have to be certain decisions that are made in order for that to be a possibility. And what are those decisions? And by making those decisions, are you somehow inadvertently ruling out another path or another opportunity for yourself? And so for us, the promotion really comes down to laying the groundwork from the real, like the inception of the book, to then be able to say, all right, now we've got the goals. Now let's look, what are you comfortable with doing? Because if I think you being on video is the best strategy, and that's my advice to you, and you hate being on camera, it's not going to work, right? Like it's just not going to work. Like if you have no charisma on camera, it's just not going to work. So, but if you love being on a podcast and you want to be audio only, there's a different strategy for that. So it's a matter of kind of aligning all of those things because that's where the success comes in. Because otherwise, I might say, "Hey, Jen, I just did this thing for marketing my book, and it was so amazing, and I had so much fun." And you'd be like, "I would never want to do that." But if I'm trying to force you to do that, it's gonna the reader, the audience, whoever, they're gonna feel it and be like, "Oh, that's not attractive. That's not pulling me in. It's not resonating with me." So that's like the fundamental part. And then everything branches off from there.
Absolutely. That's phenomenal. I think a lot of authors think that the hard part is writing their book or publishing their book, but no, 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 it's promoting and selling their book.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the part that I think people just assume if you build it, they will come. Like we have that movie from the 90s at least, right? It was in the
At
90s.
least, yeah.
Um, it doesn't work. Like you can't just put a book on Amazon and hope that people are going to find it. There's millions upon millions of books that are competing with yours. And so there's a lot of strategy that goes behind it. And maybe you don't even care if it's being sold on Amazon. Maybe you want to be driving that traffic to be bought only through you. And that's a completely different strategy. And there's different tactics that align with that strategy. So yeah, the if you build it, they will come. I just wish more authors understood that there is a lot of effort that goes into it, but it doesn't have to be like an overwhelming amount of effort, right? It can be like very small action steps that you can take day to day. It doesn't have to be, I have to go invest $50,000 in a strata. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be this crazy thing. And I think a lot of people are so afraid of the word marketing that that's what ends up happening.
And even worse, I find authors are afraid of the word selling. I
Oh, yeah.
how many authors say to me, I'm not a salesperson. I'm not a salesperson. I'm like, I know you're not a salesperson. You're an author. But
Yeah.
what I try to tell people is what we want to do is we want to create a book that you are in love with. I want you to love this cover. I want you to love this content. I want you to love this book because I want you to be excited about this book because I want you to be excited to share this book. And then it's not selling anymore. Then it's telling, then it's sharing, then it's helping. And it's easier, I think, for authors to get excited about that and help them
Mhm.
be successful.
Yeah. That's why I like promoting. It sounds
Exactly.
a little bit better.
It sounds a whole lot better, a whole lot better. So thank you so much, Jen, for this wonderful, wonderful thing. Thank you so much for everyone for joining. This is actually a series, so we're going to link to the previous one and we're going to do more. So if you're looking for two perspectives of publishing from two Jens, please like and subscribe for more. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thanks, Jen. Bye.
Thanks, Jen. Bye.